Welcome to another episode of Problem Busters with myself, Jonathan, and the Honourable Ollie.
Hello, Jonathan. I think you're quite honourable too.
Oh, you see? Oh, that's how it feels when I say it.
Yeah, that's right. It's quite a big compliment. So, hello, folks. Hello, Jonathan. How's your week going?
It's going well. Busy, a bit wet as well due to the weather. We're approaching springtime now. To all our listeners around the world.
Indeed.
Yep.
All the height of summer if you're in Australia or New Zealand.
Oh, yes. We can't forget about Australia or New Zealand.
Great countries. And so what are we going to do today, Jonathan?
We have a guest with us. We have Stacy Holland, who I'll let you introduce.
Sorry, I went to you, didn't I? So Stacy is the founder of the Stacy Holland Coaching Company and a practitioner of what is called soul-led coaching, with at least 20 years in the corporate world behind her and having embarked on this new coaching adventure. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So we usually start with a bit about you and your story and what got you to here. And I guess what's particularly interesting about your story is a couple of points. One, anything that's to do with Dubai is super interesting to me. So I'm sure we'll talk about that. And the other one is why coaching? So take it away.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. So, why coaching? It's a big question, isn't it? When somebody decides to close a chapter on one part of their career and pivot to another. But for me, it kind of felt like whilst leaving a well-established and successful corporate career was a big decision and a big leap. At the same time, it was also the most natural decision for me to take because I'd really been coaching and mentoring in my role as a leader through to really when I first started people managing a long time ago. And it's the part of my role that I had always enjoyed the most, always embraced. I'd always loved helping people with their personal development, with their growth. And as I kind of got closer to that over the last few years, I realized that at its essence, that was what coaching was. And that was therefore something that I really felt a pull to go and learn more about and become qualified and certified in. And at the time, actually, it was how do I use this skill set to become an even better leader, and an even stronger leader, because it's so needed. It's so needed in all sorts of businesses. So I thought I'll bring that. And then actually what happened was I ended up setting up my coaching practice on the side of my full-time job. And it didn't take me very long to realize that actually it was what we call the side hustle was really where the passion lay, and that I wanted to move into that full-time. And so I did that at the end of last year. I transitioned out of my last role, which was a director at BT, and into my coaching business full-time. But at its essence, I just absolutely love helping people to really see the potential that lies within them and helping them to unlock it and make changes that really make them happy and fulfilled at its core.
Awesome. Yeah. And that really speaks to me. I often feel like an unqualified leader, no matter how long I lead or how often. There's just so much to learn, and we have such a duty of care to people. And there are so many different scenarios that present in leading a team, aren't there?
There really are. I love that, that you say about that duty of care. That's a real trait of somebody who is I know we're going to talk about this in a bit, but a conscious leader is somebody who has real compassion for themselves and for those around them. So understanding that as a leader, there's this phrase, the shadow of a leader. I don't know if you've heard this, but it's, as a leader, you have the impact to inspire and motivate people so much. But at the same time, you also have the ability when that shadow is cast to have the opposite effect. And what we want are more leaders who are just generally aware of who they are and how they're showing up every day, and wanting to kind of lean more into that so that they can be genuine about what's going on for them, and where they're at, because the way you do that, that really strengthens you as a leader, and that you are also making it okay for others to do the same, for others to know it's okay to, that we all have tricky days, don't we, as well as good days. But when we role model this as leaders, and we strengthen our ability to show up as who we are in our fullness as leaders every day, then we make it okay for others to do the same. It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah. And there's that saying, isn't there? I can't hear what you're telling me because all I can see is what you're doing, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. That's it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the last few roles that you had before deciding to make this full-time side hustle, the main hustle, that got, and I think that will include Dubai, no?
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to talk about Dubai. Yes. So the role that I was in previously was, I was a digital director at BT, leading digital product. That was for the last 2 years. BT's going through huge kind of change and transformation. So it was a really good time to join that company, in a role that was about, changing their digital experiences for the better, to make them easier and simpler for customers to use. But also a big part of that role for me was, leading the team, developing the culture. There was a lot of, it was during the time, of course, with the pandemic and with lockdown. So actually the culture of the team became incredibly important, and how everybody supported each other became really important. So during that time, worked with a lot of volunteers across the whole of the digital team. And I think, certainly then there was like 1,000 people, and it's a big organization within BT, to, set up a number of guilds that helped to everyone to support each other. So it was, a diversity and inclusion guild, a well-being guild, social recognition, all these things that became even more important when we were not physically in space with each other, as to how we were going to have conversations and support each other and talk about what was happening in the team and for us individually, and the world at large.
How do you go about setting up a guild? Because I've heard this concept, but I've not seen it in practice, and I think that's super interesting for people.
Yeah, so it's actually incredibly simple. We made it very simple deliberately, because I think sometimes these things can be over-engineered. And actually the beauty of it was that it was really organic. So actually where it came from was, the intention was that there would be this cultural wrapper. The digital team wanted this cultural wrapper, and recognizing that actually this often, although the intention can be set by senior leadership, it's often a groundswell. It's often, how it kind of lives and grows and breathes and radiates throughout a team is by the people within the team on a day-to-day, for it to become part of the fabric of the team. So kind of set about listening to things like employee engagement survey insights, and hearing from people what was important, and a few really key themes came up. And so it was a case of, well, do we want to set up a number of guilds that would be led by volunteers from the team, who would be empowered to make changes, to drive change within the team for the better, against a set of principles and a vision and a purpose that they crafted for their guild. And that was it. And we basically just said, I think started with 4 or 5 guilds, and it was like, who's putting their hands up? Who'd like to get
really
involved?
Cool.
And there were like people, some of them were like, masses of people put themselves forward. So for example, diversity inclusion was incredibly popular, and well-being incredibly popular. And so, we'd end up with a guild lead, and then the guilds would rotate who was going to be the lead. Every month, somebody new would step forward and say, okay, so, and then they would kind of hold space for everybody's sessions, whether it was a backlog of ideas that they were working through to raise awareness, or so many different initiatives and things. But it wasn't complicated. And actually what we said to them was, you need to be demanding of us as the leadership team what you need from us in order to drive the change that you see on a daily basis, that sometimes, let's face it, when you're in leadership roles, you don't see. You don't see so much, right? Because a lot of the time we are in endless meetings and back to back in this, and there isn't the space to kind of get into sitting and being with the team as much as we'd love to on a day-to-day basis. So this one helped to carve that time out, and two, it helped us to become even more accountable for driving the change.
And how did that look in terms of, I understand how the guild could be founded and people putting their hand up, and that sounds really sensible. I like the idea of the rotation, that makes sense. But when you get to the business end, and that, then let's say the Diversity and Inclusion Guild has got to at the end of its first phase, if you like, and they've come up with some initiatives and some things they would like to do, what happens then?
Then they put them forward. And so there'd be a number of different things that could happen. Either it was a case of there's nothing stopping you holding a lunch and learn session to help other people to understand what it means to be a Muslim, for example. You don't even know, you just need to let us know you're doing that kind of stuff. Like, please go ahead and do that. Amazing. Fundraising, for example, we would be right, go connect with there's a central team. BT's a large organization, of course. There's a central team. Go speak with this person. We'll line up that meeting so you can have a conversation as to why it's important, from the digital team's perspective, to be raising money to support charity X, Y, or Z, for example. So we would be connecting people with other people within the wider organization to help support what it was they wanted to do. Or we would just simply say, you've got the platform, like, go for it.
Yeah, that's awesome. How did you tackle what I've seen to be the number one challenge for guild type activities, where folks say, I'd love to, but I'm just so busy?
It's a cracking one, actually. We would get quite regularly people say, I'd love to be able to give time, but I'm struggling for time. There's never an easy answer for this, because actually what we said as a principle was, if you're in the guild and you're the core groups, if you imagine like a guild could have 25 people in it broadly, like I'm saying, maybe one of the larger ones, but you might have only 4, 5, 6 core people, and then you'll have one guild lead. So we would say, like, the core group have permission. They are empowered and they have permission to give 20% of their time to the guild for the period of time they're in that core group. So it's very much like how the team, kind of digital team, ran anyway, in terms of empowering people to best manage their time within the scrum teams that they were in and the squads that they were in, which was, your time is your own. So actually, as a leadership team, we're kind of saying, if you can give up to 20% of your time to driving change, to supporting the guild, go have the conversation with your line manager. The line manager is aware as well. And between the two of you for this period of time, need to find a way to be able to accommodate that. So that was one way of doing it for the core group. For everybody else who wanted to give kind of an hour here and an hour there, it was really up to them to be able to create the space to do that. And it's really interesting because time is such a big topic, and it always comes up with pretty much every coaching client that I work with as well, as in, we don't have enough time, this belief that we don't have enough time. And time is the one thing we can't create more of. We can create more money, we can create more success and more abundance, we can be more fulfilled. We can't create more time. But what we can do is change the way that we view the time that we've got. And it's really interesting, actually, because I just bought a book, I've just started reading it, called Joy at Work by Marie Kondo, who did, I don't know if you've heard the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying. It's a Japanese lady, anyway.
I have heard of her.
Yeah. And the reason I bought it is because I loved the book about tidying, because actually the principle is, clear up the clutter around you and you will discover so much space in your day, so much space in your environment, so much space in your mind. This is the way that we view time is, it's so similar. It's like, actually take, there's so many tools to help with this now. So, like Microsoft Office will tell you, Outlook will tell you how you're using your time. you can get a report on that every Monday that says, you spent your time here, here, and here, and here, and you can go, that's really interesting. I spent, how many hours I spent in admin or in checking emails or in meetings. So it's an invitation actually to be able to say, well, if you feel passionately about supporting this cause and you're empowered to do that, how are you going to take control of that situation in order to be able to do something that you feel passionate about in a company that you enjoy working for, with a purpose that you align with? Being given this opportunity it's not available everywhere. So what are you going to do to kind of make the most of that? And you know what, those people who they make it happen, the people who really want to make it happen, they make it happen. And sometimes they need to pull back. Sometimes they'll need to say, do you know what? I've got a big launch coming up. So I need to pull back a bit. I've got to focus. It was like, it's absolutely fine. This is voluntary. Yeah. You come and give your time when you can. It's
And thank you. Yeah, and I can definitely see that there's a factor in the line manager understanding the intent of the executive team to allow people to create space to do some good work here. I can see that's really important, and I could also see that where this would often falter in organizations that are struggling to find time to improve themselves would be when the person talks to the line manager and the line manager says, yes, but you still need to get done. And that's
the thing, is your role is your role, right? So what's the, and again, it depends on the culture that you're in as well, because what you want to be, let's face it, we all want to be in a culture where it's just, we're measured and focused on the outcome, the impact that we have, the outcome that we deliver, not being micromanaged the whole way through the process. So actually, if that individual says, I'm clear on my goals and objectives, or OKRs or whatever it is they're working towards, I'm clear on what I need to be delivering in my role, I'm going to do this thing as well. And actually maybe for a period of time, you might see less of me in meeting XYZ. Doesn't mean I'm not doing the work. Doesn't mean I'm not going to still deliver the outcome. Just means I'm going to give a little bit of focus over here to something I feel passionate about. There is endless research as well. And there's more and more companies doing this that shows that the more companies give people the opportunity to invest their time in something they are passionate about, the more engaged they are at work. And it could be something outside of work. So for example, I moved down from a 5-day week to a 4-day week. I spent the 1 day a week on my business, and I was so much happier in my role, where I was spending a day a week doing something I was really passionate about. I was fortunate enough as well to be working on this cultural wrapper, and I was so much more engaged in my role as a product director because I'd created the space to do both. So we have to know those opportunities are there. We have to feel brave enough. We have to step into courage to ask for what we want, and then go, how am I going to show up to be able to support myself during this and still against the expectations of what my line manager needs from me too.
Yeah. I one day would like to get to the stage where I can do a day a week of podcasting and volunteering, and I'm sure that I would be more effective, to use Swedish or Danish examples. I'm sure I would be more effective the rest of the week, right? Once I'd got settled into it. Let's talk about Dubai. And the reason I keep bringing it up is I think that choosing to work in a different country is quite an exciting and challenging and daunting thing for many people. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about your experience? And I'm sure that some tidbits will come out of that.
Challenging and exciting and daunting. Yes, all of the above. I mean, it's an extraordinary experience, just even getting to the point of being offered a role overseas, let alone the bit where you actually then move and then settle in and then work and adapt to a new culture, etc. I mean, for me, it was, I was at that time I was working at 3. I'd come back after having my second daughter, and I was in a role that just wasn't quite the right fit for me. I knew it wasn't quite the right fit, and I knew I was ready for more. I was 100% ready for more. I was ready to take a next step up in my career. I knew I wanted to run a digital team. I wanted to, deliver digital transformation. I wanted the accountability of that. And I was ready for it, and so I remember walking down Maidenhead High Street in a lunch hour one day, just really kind of feeling into like, like, what next? Like, what my, I feel like something's coming, but and I need a change. Anyway, as happens, the universe delivered. I get a phone call, and it's a headhunter who says, found your profile on LinkedIn, your range of experience, etc., etc. I've got this amazing opportunity. I think they'd really be keen on seeing you. Da da da. So, vice president digital experience, running this team. Blah blah blah. I said, sounds great. Sounds really good. And he said, well, there's just one thing. I was like, what's the thing? Like, the thing is it's in Dubai. And I went, oh, right. Okay. But I was just so ready for it. I was like, do you know what? Give me a change. And I was at a point as well in my life at home and with the kids and my husband. And, we still talk about that time now where we were just like, one of the biggest drivers in our decision, our collective decision to go and move overseas, like pack the family up and go overseas, was we felt like we were stuck in a routine that we couldn't see a way out of. And that was like, it was really a sense of, we desperately were looking for some adventure and some change and some variety. And there was nothing wrong with how things were. It was perfectly kind of normal. And, we were fortunate. We had all our friends and family around us, all the rest of it. But there was just that call for something more. Just something more, and just wanting to really shake things up a bit. And so that's exactly what came, was really shaking things up a bit, which wasn't just a new job. It was a new job and a complete move overseas.
Wow.
And
do you know what? I assumed that you'd made that move before family, because so many would, right? Because what you've done is such a challenge for so many. Good for you.
Thank you. And that was probably the part that made it the hardest decision, really. I mean, my husband and we've still got him. Found it the other day, actually. Pros and cons list, pages, pros and cons. Like, are we making the right decision? Is this the right thing to do? And the kids were very little at the time. They were just 2 and 3 years old. And family were heartbroken. I mean, it's difficult news to break, to say, we're moving overseas, and
I've done it twice. Yes,
you had, right.
You're coming back though, right? You're coming back in a few weeks.
Yeah.
No, mum.
Yeah, and everybody, and so we said 2 years. Everybody we know went to Dubai, said 2 years, and very few people stay less than 2 years. Most people stay for longer. So there was that whole kind of decision making process, but it sort of came down to one, wanting the adventure. 2, I was ready for that step up. And this was like, at the time, Dubai are now accelerating with their digital transformation and all their capabilities and the investment. I mean, it's astronomical, really. But certainly when I was over there, like, they were several years behind the UK. So I knew I had the opportunity to come in and really help to bring, digital experiences up to where they would be in the UK and beyond, because their app that my team developed at the time is now the number 1 app in the UAE. I mean, that's that was where we ended up. We really catapulted things, but yeah. So that decision to go, and actually, not just the decision to go pack the kids and the family up and go overseas. It was going to a country where English wasn't the first language. And culturally so very, very different from the UK. Yeah. And I definitely underestimated that.
They have some real culture, don't they? Like some real practices that are just so different to walking down the main street in Maidenhead. And to folks listening, that is a really nice market town southwest of London.
Yes. I think 3 have moved. I'm not sure they're there anymore, but yes, no, you're absolutely right. So I then found, and I went over there, it was an extraordinary process, really. I think I had like 11 interviews, and they flew me over, and I had back to back for like 24 hours, and it was pretty intense, and it went on for a few months, and, lots of toing and froing, but eventually, we came to offer, packed the kids up, went over, and I don't think hadn't really thought so much about how different that culture was going to be. Because to me, in my mind, I was like, I'm just going to go and do a job and we're going to go and live somewhere else for a bit. I'd really oversimplified it. And also because I'd done it from the energy of, I want this role. I want to have an impact. The package is amazing. This is great. Like tick, tick, tick. This was all very much what I would talk about as decisions led from my head rather than from my heart. And that's why throughout the process of being in Dubai, I went through a bit of a awakening, if you like, to what actually made me happy as opposed to what I thought made me happy.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so, I would say very sort of ego, and I say ego in the sense of, the part of us that likes to do well and likes to succeed and likes to appear to be nailing it, basically, was like, yeah, well done me, tick, 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 this role this is brilliant. And then I got there and it was brilliant. It was a fantastic role in an organization that was really embracing change, but it was also incredibly difficult. Very difficult because I had completely underestimated what it meant to come into a culture where it's a very retail heavy mall orientated culture, and for a good reason, right? Because most of the year, well, not most of the year, but a good 5-6 months of the year, it's extremely hot. And everybody piles into the malls. So the malls are like real experiences. So their retail stores are like real destinations to go to. And they hadn't yet really built a digital presence. So I kind of walked in and I was like, so I'm responsible for all of the digital platforms and customer-facing experiences, the app, the website, chatbots, all the rest of it, which we brought in later. But I was like, it all needs changing completely. And there was just a bit of hesitation. There was like we know we need to, but we're still trying to understand why it's important. And so
sounds
that
like
was
the dot-com boom, right?
Right, yeah. Like, we know we need to, and we've brought you here to do that. And, and I would go and I would put my case forward for investment. I would show benchmarking. I brought on IBM iX to work with us as well throughout the process. I built an incredible team. I completely changed the culture of the team. We ripped out one of the floors actually in the building and redesigned and rebuilt it. So it was a massive co-creating, collaborating space. I chose not to have an office when everybody else had offices because that's what you did as an executive there. It wasn't the culture I wanted to work in. So there was a lot that I kind of did during that time, but it was not easy. It was not easy. And actually at times it was quite lonely. It was lonely. There was a very strong executive leadership team, but very predominantly 95% male. There was still.
You must have seen that a few times in your career, right?
I have. It's not unlike, I wouldn't. It's not like unlike older institutions here in the UK for sure. And they were absolutely had a lot of plans and intentions to increase the number of women in leadership roles and just coming through the ranks generally within the organization. But I felt like I joined really at the sort of the start of that. So I took my position very seriously as like a female leader and a role model in the organization. I found myself mentoring and coaching a lot of women from all over the world, including Emirati women as well, like helping to, what is it that you really desire? What does it mean to be a leader to you? What does it mean to you to be a leader in this culture? What is it that you're trying to change? And what's important about that? Just these conversations of, actually the Sheikh talks about, very much, he's very passionate, very driven, very much around his desire for this to be, a balanced, society, equal society, and all the organizations, especially the Emirati owned organizations like the company was I work for, have, are behind that 100% as well. But it takes time. It's a big shift from where they had been to the, the vision that they had kind of moving forward. So I took my role in that incredibly seriously. What I loved about it so much was as there were definitely difficult periods. But the bits that really lit me up were working in a culture and an environment where people come from all over the world. Like, I think I had like 20 different nationalities within my team. I'd walk around the floor, I'd hear people talking in different languages all over the place. I would see people eating different types of food. I'd see people bringing that in and sharing it with other people to educate them, celebrating each other's kind of culturally significant dates, or the different way they would celebrate on a birthdays, and just, these sorts of things. And I loved it. Like, it was, and there's something about, coming together when you're an expat and you go to a place where, home is not just an hour away. It was a journey, right, to kind of get home for pretty much everybody there. And so the people that you work with and the community that you build outside of work as an expat become your family. It becomes so incredibly important. So again, back to culture, for me, the culture that I kind of built and fostered while I was there was as important. And and I wrote about this the other day, actually, was the first time I heard the word change agent and change maker was in Dubai, when one of the C-suite executives said to me, you realize that you are one of the change makers in this organization. And I was like, what's that? I hadn't heard it before. I was like, sounds great. What's that? And then I realized what it was. And of course, I was very, really happy to take the compliment, but I realized he was right. He was right, because my mentality was, it gets to be better. I'm driving change. When you choose to be in a transformation role, and I choose to do that now, like I choose to help people transform their careers, transform their lives. Then I was doing it through transforming digital transformation to make the company better, to help the customer experience become more seamless, so it's easier for employees as well to kind of do their jobs. When you choose to work in a transformation role, you're choosing to step into the role of a change maker, of somebody who just wants to make things better because they just should be better. Yeah.
I think that might be one of the things that motivates most of the software engineers that I've ever worked with. They may not articulate it, or perhaps even be consciously aware of it, but they just want to make things better. So that really speaks to me. And also the realization of diversity. So when Melbourne is a reasonably diverse city, and it's got a lot of people from Mediterranean cultures and so forth, but it's still quite white, right? And Asia and India haven't fully arrived yet, not in the way they have in, say, Auckland and New Zealand. And then when I got to England, and particularly when I started working in London, I was just like, it feels like the whole world is walking down the street. Like, it feels like everybody is represented. And I realized that, to me, cultures that had representation from people from all over the world were succeeding, and cultures that were monoculture felt a little bit like they were reseeding to me.
And you're spot on. I mean, it's that, if you're at a very basic level, I would say, like, your customer base, your employee base needs to represent your customer base, right? So if you've got a diverse customer base, which most companies have these days, then your employee base needs to also be equally diverse. Otherwise, how can you truly be in touch with what they desire and help to create, whether it's a product or an experience for them that really meets their needs? Otherwise you're just out of touch, aren't you?
Such a good point. And Jonathan, I know you're being very polite because you've got the little ones in the background, but
yes,
but this is so your area, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, growing up in London, I've always been around sort of diverse cultures, right? And my late mum, bless her heart, shipped us off to France as well. So although the cultures are quite similar, there are sort of nuances there as well. And yeah, I think the experience you get from learning about different cultures and how they eat food and and how they celebrate on different occasions and things like that, I think it has a good way of sort of promoting that sort of that teamwork and collaboration as well, because now you understand where people come from a bit more and why they react a certain way to different things that you do or they see around you. And yeah, I think I have one question about the culture in Dubai and the culture here. So whilst you were mentoring women, did you find there was a lot of common barriers in sort of the culture in Dubai and the culture in Europe? Oh, sorry, the barriers for entry for women to sort of enter the sort of workspace, the digital space. Because I find in software, which I'm currently in, there are a lot of it's sort of male driven, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to know, were there similar barriers in barriers in Dubai that there are sort of in Europe when it comes to getting women into those sort of roles?
Yeah. I think it's the same the world over. From what I read and consume as well as what I've kind of experienced personally, the barriers to the main barriers to entry or for women in terms of having the opportunities that they desire have come down to confidence in the first instance. There was a brilliant study done a few years ago called The Confidence Gap. It was by a couple of women in America, and they published a paper on it. And they talked about how this is inherent since children, and with the difference between boys and girls, and how the activities that boys are really encouraged to do versus the activities girls are encouraged to do, and the mindset that we shape unknowingly and unwillingly for boys to take risks and girls to be careful, how, and obviously I'm generalizing, but this is, within the paper, how, boys more teamwork, girls more kind of solo work. And actually what do you need when you get into a work environment? Like, it's the networking, it's the teamwork. And actually what are women naturally brilliant at? It's coming together. They've been doing it for centuries. So, there's, these kind of, I guess, influences that become stories as we get older, that shape, as women, that shape our view of the world and what we're capable of doing. And what this paper was kind of saying was that actually, it's even this confidence gap between girls and boys and men and women starts being embedded from such a young age that, they saw it playing out in things like applying for a job. And they would say, they were kind of saying there was, a woman would, in their study, would look at the job description, and then they would be like, oh, I don't meet it 100%, so I probably won't apply for that job. Whereas a man would look at the job description, he'd say, I'll hit about 60%, that'll do. And the confidence would be enough to take him through. He'd be like, I'm going for the interview. And, and little things like that.
I've had that thought, especially when moving country, when you've got to take the job you can get.
Yeah, exactly. But it's that like confidence to say, I'm good enough, I'm going to go for it, right? And it's that gap that women have of feeling, I'm generalizing, but for the sake of the point I'm making, feeling that, we need to have everything ticked and everything right and everything boxed off before we kind of put ourselves forward. And why is that? It's because, fear of failure, losing face, people pleasing, that validation that we seek from others, which is all, exists in men as well. Of course it does, but it's more prevalent in women. So actually, I think, these kinds of beliefs are slowly changing because the awareness of them is much greater, and more mentoring, more coaching, people parenting in a different way. So if I look at how I parent my two girls, compared to the way that we were parented, compared to the way that, my parents were parented, like, it's just, it's night and day. It's night and day. I couldn't imagine like saying to my kids, there's a ceiling on what you can do. My parents never said that, but like, you get my point, right? Every opportunity is available to them. So I think very similar barriers in, but a lot of it comes down to confidence. And again, it's kind of not only as women are working their way up, but there's often a wobble after they've had children, or when they had one, thinking about having another, it's just, there's wobble, there's points in. And actually what we can do to help is for that not to be a thing. And one of the things I loved just before I left BT was the woman that we appointed to be my successor got offered the role, I think it was a week after she went on her maternity leave. She was given the directorship role, even though she was on maternity leave, and even though she wasn't going to come back for maybe a year, because she was the right person for the job. And that, for me, I mean, that's progression as far as I'm concerned. You know,
That really is.
That's the sort of stuff we need to see.
That really is. I think that's fantastic, because I come from a family which are predominantly women, and I can't stress how much anxiety there is before sort of leaving on maternity leave in regards to job security, as well as, you know, just other things as well. And my wife as well. We've experienced that as well. So I think that's a huge step forwards, and you know, I think that should be welcomed everywhere, to be fair.
Yeah, it's a real you know, this shaky confidence after coming back from having had time out. I mean, for me personally, after my first daughter was born, I came out guns a-blazing. I was like, I am so ready, like, you know, get me, you know, back in, you know, it doesn't change, nothing's going to change me. And then of course the reality sets in of like, okay, well, it is different because, you know, I have a small child, and I can't pretend that's not the case. And then something changed for me when I had my second daughter, and I felt my confidence definitely wobbled then. And also I wanted to spend a bit more time with them. I wanted to be, you know, I went down to 3 days a week then actually for a period, because I didn't want to miss out on them growing up. But of course, the more I stepped out of work, the less confident I felt going in. So
do you think that might have changed now? And the reason I say that is both of us have had the experience, haven't we, Jonathan, of working with execs who are very successful and very effective, but also work part-time. And I feel like it's quite a recent thing for me. I don't know about you, Jonathan.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's I think it ties into, from what I've experienced, is that conscious leadership piece that I think Stacy sort of goes into, and I say that because you can really tell the difference between a leader that makes a conscious sort of effort to enable their team for success, if that makes sense. So, Stacey, when you talk about conscious leadership and you know, and making a conscious effort, what exactly could you put into words what exactly a conscious leader is?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For me, the essence of a conscious leader is somebody who is just acutely self-aware. So it's somebody who really has taken the time to know who they are, and shows up with integrity, compassion, who's really authentic, who's intentional in their actions, who, you know, is accountable. You know, somebody who isn't afraid to be seen. You know, it's an authentic leader as well, right? Someone who's not afraid to be seen for who they are. And a conscious leader, you know, is somebody who is willing to understand that about themselves, makes it okay for others to do the same, because they show up in their authenticity and their vulnerability and everything that comes with it. So not only are they changing themselves, but they're helping to change the collective. So there's like a real sense of unity and community here as well with a conscious leader. It's a cause and a purpose beyond self, but it starts with self. Yeah.
So how do you identify your sort of purpose? How would so? I'm lost for words here, but yeah, how would you what do you mean by when you say sort of identifying the purpose and you know, the importance of it?
So such a good question. Purpose. So purpose, of course, from a company perspective. So as a conscious leader who galvanizes people behind a common purpose and a vision, will be that vision, that mission statement, you know, that purpose for being that a company will have at the very heart of its reason for being,
Mm.
right? So BT, for example, was Connect for Good. So their purpose that sits underneath, there's a lot they do in terms of, enabling connectivity across the country, making lives better for people because of it, et cetera, et cetera. But, they also have this Connect for Good. So there's like a real, there's a real purpose around people and community and connecting, people within the UK for the greater good, to do good with what they have. So as a leader within, and I'm just using BT as an example, but, a conscious leader will help to galvanize people around that purpose and that vision and that mission, and to be aware of the contribution that they themselves can make and how important it is that they show up as their authentic selves in order to, a little bit about, like you talked about earlier, the richness and the beauty of the diversity of teams. So being able to, companies don't achieve great things with people, with cultures that are revered, with people who, are advocates for the brand or for the organization by just pushing people to hit a number. There are plenty of organizations that do that, right? But they'll see their attrition rates will be high, or their employee engagement scores will be low. But companies who do this with a real sense of purpose and unity those are the companies where you find people are able to be themselves, where they have diverse and inclusive cultures and environments, where everybody knows like the role they're showing up to do each day and how they add value, not just this is my job description, this is what I come and do, but how I add value as a human being, as an individual. This is what I bring. And actually some of that then comes back to that individual being clear on their purpose, what they're here to do. And that is such a big question to ask. And it's like, you can go through many coaching sessions to get clarity on what your purpose is. And it can evolve and change all the rest of it. But in a company environment, it's really about galvanizing around that as a collective and feeling like you're a part of that collective doing for good.
Yeah, I think that's that's a great way of putting it, because I think Ollie, as well as myself, we've worked in startups where at times it's a sense of, if you're in a leadership role, if you're in a role period, and there's not that sort of purpose, there isn't that identifiable purpose, where it's a case of, okay, you just work hard, and then obviously that leads to burnout
yes.
and other things, and you're less, there's a lot of friction, and it's not as cohesive. But once you do get that target or that purpose, it makes everything flow a lot better, and you start to get the enjoyment out of it. So I think I can definitely relate to that.
It's so true, and it's but it is really important that that individual knows why they're showing up in that role, in that company, for that purpose. Because that's not every company with every purpose is going to gel with somebody, right? It's like, it's just not. So actually, how does as an individual, how does my purpose, what makes me happy? Let's put it down to that. What makes me happy? What lights me up? Where do I feel satisfied and fulfilled? And does that align with the culture in this organization? Does it align with their purpose and their mission? Do I feel valued? Can I clearly see where I'm making a contribution? Am I progressing? Do I feel a part of a team, something bigger than myself? So it is important that the individual is clear, like you say, because when we're not aligned with that and we're questioning why we're doing what we're doing, that is when we lead to burnout. And that's happened to me several times over. And that's why I ultimately took a decision to just leap into what it is that lights me up every day. As big and scary as that decision was, it was the right one.
So tell us a little bit about that. And I came across a podcast recently called something along the lines of Know When to Jump. And it's from a friend who's at that moment, right? Many years, more than a decade in one role, thinking, maybe I want to do something else. So what was going through your mind at that point? When did you know that you knew?
I knew. So I had a period in in, just going back in time here, October, November 2020, where I got signed off for a month with exhaustion and anxiety for BT. And this wasn't the first time. I'd had panic attacks in Dubai and moments of burnout there as well, but I just papered over it. I was like, I'm just going to keep going. Keep going. It's all going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
Thank you for sharing that, because, hearing the first half of this episode, people will probably think she's amazing, but I could never be like her because she sounds superhuman. So thank you for sharing that you're
not
human.
Superhuman. Yes. No, my pleasure. It's so important. It is so important to just be honest about our journeys. And, my Dubai experience at its worst, I was like panic attacks on the bathroom floor before going to work. And I did not know why. There was nothing wrong on paper. It was just like, what's wrong? Literally, I was saying to myself, like, what's wrong with you? Look at this amazing opportunity, this amazing role, and this income, tax-free, great lifestyle, all the rest. But I was just like, in my soul, in my heart, I was like, but I don't want to be doing this anymore. But I didn't admit it to myself. I was like, it's okay. And that's when I started on my spiritual awakening. My journey started there. And then I just leant more and more into that, and I let that lead me. But I still squashed it. I still was like, no. It's like, but this is what I do. Like, I'm a digital leader. This is what I do. I've been doing this for like 20 odd years. And then I took the transition from Dubai back to the UK into the BT role. And I was like, yeah, no, because there's this, and I'll do the coaching on the side, and that will be fine because this is what I do. And also, I was the main income. I was the one bringing the money. And so, no, I'm not in a position to say I'm just going to give it all up because I have a responsibility here. So, but we can only squash those things for so long. And when we keep pushing them down, all we're doing is compacting it to a point at which it then inevitably blows up for us. Inevitably, there comes a day where actually our soul goes, okay, you didn't want to stop. I gave you plenty of warning signs. I'm now going to stop you. And for me, that was October, November 2020. And I hit the wall. And I was like, and again, I was just like, I don't understand. My job is going really well. I've got this brilliant cultural work stuff that I'm doing as well with the team, which is really lighting me up. But underneath it all, like in my heart, I was like, this is not what I came here to do. This is not who I came here to be. But it was too scary to look at.
Hugely scary.
Yeah, too scary. So I was like, okay. And actually what happened was, I was just in floods of tears on a Monday morning, just out of the blue, literally out of the blue. And I was sitting on the stairs at home. And I said to my husband, like, I can't even go online. I just don't even know what to do. So I called my GP and I said, this is going on. And they were amazing. Straight away, 2 weeks off, no doubt, 2 weeks off, come back again in 2 weeks, probably another 2 weeks off, just rest, just sleep. And my boss was incredible. He just went, we're going to take care of it. Just go. Don't even text. Just go take care of yourself. I didn't even say anything. I just said, I can't come in for 2 weeks. I've just spoken to the GP. Like, no problem. And that's trust for you, right? That's when you work for somebody where you have like a good trusting relationship. And in that time, I really did. I slept for 2 weeks, nonstop, like massive recuperation in my body, just huge. And then I came out of it the other side, and there was just this voice, and part of my coaching, I'm a soul-led coach. Part of my coaching is intuitive coaching as well. So I listen, I hear what needs to come through. There was a nudge coming through saying, it's the coaching. You've got to go into the coaching. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine. Okay. And, but at that point still, I was like, but the right thing to do, the safe option, is to see, how do I incorporate this into my role? And so that was my first step. And that was okay. Because actually, there's a great book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. Brilliant book for anyone who's considering taking a leap. And it's this, if you try to go from where you are today to that vision you've got in the future, like, chances are it's never going to happen the way that you envisage it happening. It's too big. It's too big. I've got a vision for my business for the future, which blows my mind where I want to go, but I couldn't step into that tomorrow. It's a process. So this was like a good step forward. I was like, I'm taking action. I'm moving forward. And I'm okay, I want to do the coaching within my role. And then that kind of evolved to, I'd like to look to see if I could create a coaching role for myself within BT. And then that evolved to, actually, I think I want to coach in my way with my methods and everything that I bring into integrated coaching, which means doing it with my own business. And that was like, oh my God. And I actually, started the business and set up an Instagram account, and then just went, and left it. didn't post, didn't do anything, just went, oh my God, okay, it's done. And then, kept working, and I kept working with amazing coaches and mentors, and just kept working on the blocks that existed for me as to why I couldn't do it, why I felt it was going to be hard, the terror that I had at stepping away from something that was so deeply known to me. I knew how to do my work inside out, back to front. And I was talking about becoming an entrepreneur. Like, what? I was like, it was a lot, but it was just those incremental steps. And then the minute that I did, and then I started telling people I had a coaching business, promoting it, just posting, writing from soul, this stuff. The next thing I knew was it was May 21. And this is not a very long timeline, but there's a lot happened in that time. I knew by May 21, I was like, this is over. My corporate career as I know it today, I realize I've already decided, I know that this is my path. And it was June when I had the conversation with my line manager to say, I'm, handing in my notice. And he was just like, of course you're off to do this. It makes perfect sense. And I had a 6-month notice period. And that was great because that gave me the space that I needed to build my confidence even more, before the big day came in December. And then by that point, I was so in it already. I was just like, yep, and every day now still, I'm learning new things. It's like going from working in a way that feels quite, there was a blueprint to how I did things in my corporate career. Like, things were different every day. Of course they are. You work in digital and transformation, things change all the time. But the approach, the way I showed up, how I did my work, how I led the team, it was well practiced. I knew where I was with it. I knew how to write strategy documents and P&Ls and, manage backlogs and roadmaps and all the rest of it. But do I know how to run a business and not an entrepreneur? No, no idea. But does that excite me beyond belief? And am I learning now every day? And I'm already building a team. I've got my own backlog in my business. I'm still showing up and speaking and these things. The biggest thing I would say to anybody who's considering taking a leap, one, listen to that nudge, because it is there, it is telling you something. And secondly, don't fall into the trap of feeling like you are starting all over again, because you're not. And that's been the biggest thing for me is actually, I'm an executive leader still. I might be an entrepreneur in year 1 of my business full time, but I'm still an executive leader and I show up as her every day in my business. And that's why my business will succeed. And I know it because I'm doing what I love. I'm passionate about it. And I come from a place of I'm bringing with me all these decades of experience. And that's, what actually was some of the best advice that I was given in this transition. So yeah, it's scary, but it's an adventure I've chosen to go on with the family who are supporting me 100%. God love them all.
I'm getting goosebumps. What a story. Thank you. And that really speaks to me. The concept of, I did a couple of years of helping people that were unemployed get jobs in NGOs in Australia. And it was some of the hardest and most humbling times of my life when I really felt like I wanted to help people and wasn't equipped to. And one of the things that I really wanted to help people to see, particularly the employers that I was putting people in front of, was that this 61-year-old Maltese mum, who was now a widow, was not just someone who turned up and had never done anything in her life. She was someone who had a whole life of experience that was relevant to a whole lot of different things. And so I really loved that idea of this is not starting again. This is taking the next step and bringing all of your experience with you.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So where do we go from there? What about taking it a step forwards? How do you advise people to recognize conscious leaders within their teams and then begin to support them and nurture them?
I think the first thing is to recognize if you are a conscious leader. So if you're a conscious leader, you're going to see another one a mile off, for sure. So if you see in your team that you have somebody who continually fights for the bigger cause, shows up, is compassionate and empathetic, always works with honesty and integrity, takes accountability for their own actions, very intentional in what they do, and is always asking the questions about, how is this serving the greater good? It doesn't have to be like the greater good. I'm like quotation marks greater good, but like, how is this best serving our customers? How does this come back to our mission and our purpose? And how can we bring everybody on the journey with us? Some of the, change makers and conscious leaders are, love to kind of understand and harness the power of teams and collaboration and cooperation. So you'll see those people. They'll be the ones who are driving and inspiring and motivating others as well. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the person that's standing up doing all the talking all of the time. Let's not, overlook those people who are maybe slightly quieter, but equally impactful in their own way. You can be really careful not to kind of pigeonhole, conscious leaders and change makers as people who stand on the soapbox all the time, because we know that it takes, real kind of diversity of people to lead and to drive change. But you'll know those people who are there to drive change for the better and who are always looking to better themselves and improve. And I mean that in the sense of, how can I keep learning and developing and growing, and how can I help others as well? And that is, find those people, really listen to those people, make those people a part of the change as well. They are there to help, to lead and to nurture and to grow and, and to help be a part of transformation in whatever form that takes within the organization. But, these are leaders. These are the leaders of the future. We're in this new age of, even with everything that's going on in the world right now, this is, a new age of unity. It really is. And one of the things that lights me up more than anything right now is seeing how many people are stepping forward and saying, I'm here and what can I do?
Yeah, and we've seen this and this has come through some of the coaching that I do, and there's this real theme in leaders at the moment that it seems to have become okay to say I'm not okay at work, and that was never the case back in the day. I can remember in the 90s somebody saying, I think I'm suffering from depression, and that would maybe happen once a month. You look at today and people will say that in a stand-up and other people will support them. That's amazing progress.
Yeah, it really is. You're so right. It really is.
So this is probably quite an unpopular question for a lot of leaders, but when you notice those people and you see them doing all of these great behaviors that you've talked about, and just being the leaders of the future, when they come to you and talk to you about the things they'd like to go on and do, and you realize that those are no longer within your team, what advice would you have for leaders in that moment?
Leave. Always. My advice is always, well, it's two things, isn't it? It's like, go after what you feel you're being called towards. So my role as a line manager was never to like keep somebody in the team, even if they were the most talented person, and I would be absolutely like gutted to see them leave. Like, who am I to stand in the way of them going and fulfilling, what they're capable of or following their path? They're just passing through. those people just pass through. Like it's like an invitation to come in to our lives and to our teams for a period of time before then passing on to do something else. And somebody who is a conscious leader is going to want the variety, is going to want to experience different things, impact in different ways, move onwards, move upwards, because they recognize that actually the higher you go, the more opportunity you have to drive real change, because the more people you can bring on that journey with you and the more it radiates out. So, if I can keep somebody in the team, I would never hold them back from moving on. And actually the kind of conversations that I have would either be, tell me what's missing from this team and let's see if there's an opportunity to bring it in a way that, benefits us and benefits you as well, because maybe I'm missing something, right? Because I don't always have the detail. Or tell me what you're looking to do next and let me know how I can support you in that, always.
Yeah. And this is something we talk about a lot, isn't it, Jonathan? And I know when you stepped into the role that you're in, that you suddenly found yourself creating this space for people, right?
Yeah. It was a bit of a change from being sort of at the other end of it, and then being able to identify things and making changes. I mean, to your point before, there were people on the team that said, "Oh, I'm going through bouts of depression, this and that," and myself, I remember during the pandemic, I went to the house of one of my team members to make sure they were okay. During lockdown, just to see if everything was good, and being able to sort of make, I don't want to say create a safe space, but allow that sort of, or drive that culture in the team, which allows people to say, okay, I'm not feeling well, or and everybody will rally around them rather than judge them. So I think that is one of the that's one of the highlights of of being in my role now. And I think I speak to Ollie a lot about that as well. And I do sometimes get that air of, do you know, the imposter syndrome?
Yeah.
So and that's one of the things that again is really good to sort of speak to other people and sort of get feedback on it. And I'm never afraid to really say I don't know anything, or could you please could give me some advice. But yeah, I think being able to as you do, to your point, as you do sort of move upwards and into these different roles, there is a lot more opportunity. And it's an opportunity for you not just to make change, in terms of like the product or the service you're providing, but definitely in the team culture.
Completely. And you're so right. There's nothing more empowering than a leader saying to you, please teach me. What do I need to know? Like, I'm not, help me to understand and help me to learn. And it's a show of vulnerability from the leader, which is with just incredible for building relationships. And like I said, also making it okay for others to do the same, and incredibly empowering them for the person in the team who without a doubt is the person that's got the information. That they've got the power of the information. It's impossible as a leader to have all the details, and why pretend that you do? Where's the benefit to that? So,
What would you say to organizations that want to develop conscious leaders?
So I believe deeply in coaching cultures, and democratizing coaching and making it available throughout organizations. I think the fact is it's often just made available for executives and for leaders who are going through times of change or transitioning, or who are on talent development programs. But actually the benefit of having a culture where people know how to have coaching conversations, whether it's with the people in their team, with a buddy, the power of that helps to create conscious leaders, because it helps to create or bring about an understanding of self. So when we're asking questions of somebody else about what's going on for them in the day, how they're feeling about, coming out of a meeting. And you can notice, because actually we're all empathetic beings. And when we lean into that and we notice that somebody's energy's been a bit off, or they've been a bit quiet on that day, and we get curious about that, and we say to them, like, what was going on for you in the meeting? Is everything all right? Is there anything I can do to support you? Just that in itself is an act of showing that you're empowering somebody with the ability to start to become a conscious leader, because you're opening up their awareness of others around them. Like, even that, that in itself. But you've got to create the culture where it's not a tell culture from the top. It's got to be a culture where people have got a very clear vision and purpose that they are all galvanizing around. And then we kind of nurture and encourage and hold people accountable to getting to the goal, or the milestone, or whatever that they're responsible for, in a way that is true to them. And that it's not an overnight transformation. It requires people to come in. It requires leadership teams, C-suite, CEOs to be conscious leaders, because it absolutely starts with role modeling from the top down and saying, this is how we do it here. It absolutely starts there.
That makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Jonathan, I think it might be time for your favorite section. What do you think?
Ooh, I do. This section is called the sharing section, where we ask our guests to give us a bit more insight on the books and the movements that they're enjoying right now. So the first question is quite a big one, actually. Who do you most look up to in the world? It's quite a biggie.
Do you know what? I'm going to sound like really soppy when I say this, and my husband won't believe me, but I'm going to say my husband. And the reason that I say that is because he is a man who, his whole career has been very successful in what he's done, worked incredibly hard. We met when we were in telecoms. And the moment that the Dubai opportunity came along, he followed my light, because he knew how much this meant to me. And so he took the decision at that point. This is when we weren't married at that point. We actually got married 6 weeks before we went to Dubai, because it's tricky to live in Dubai when you're not married. So he took voluntary redundancy so that I could take this opportunity, so we could go and explore and see what it would open up for us in Dubai. And from that moment onwards, he has chosen to be the primary child carer for our kids, and set up his own business as well. But he has always, it has been a very uncomfortable journey for him, because he's very much a bloke's bloke, very much in his masculine. And he's had to learn along the way, one, to be around two little girls a lot of the time. It's been quite an eye-opening experience for him. But also there are so many men who are now coming into situations where they are, they're the child carer, they've taken redundancy, the wife or the partner or, their other half is off, maybe the higher earner, and giving them the opportunity to do that by stepping back and saying, I will support you so that you can go do this. It doesn't mean that, they are any less passionate or driven about what they want to do, but creating space for the person that they love to go and do what they want to do in a very untraditional way, which, by the way, for men can bring up a lot, can feel quite disempowering, can require a lot of vulnerability, can bring up a lot that's been squashed since childhood, right? In terms of, but little boys are brought up to believe, but we're the breadwinners. We are, this is what we do. So actually, because I think my husband's amazing, so I'm going to say Mark.
Yeah, I think great man.
And good on him.
Say, yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, very, very good on him. Second one is, what book or film has most inspired you recently?
Can I say a podcast?
Oh, yeah.
So I adore Brené Brown. And Brené Brown's got a podcast called Dare to Lead. She's actually currently not streaming on Spotify, but her whole backlog is there. I find her so incredible, so inspiring. I really look up to her. She just the way that she's shown up in all of her vulnerability about her own journey and her, and the value that she brings in terms of helping us all to understand more about ourselves. So her podcast is called Dare to Lead. And my favorite episode that I listened to just recently was with America Ferrera, the actress, American actress, and it was around identity and integrated leadership. And it was just so eye-opening and it's so impassioned, and they talked so much from a place that I deeply, deeply resonate with, that I love her work. So podcast, Brené Brown, Dare to Lead.
Oh, lovely! I think we'll add that to the show notes as well, so our listeners can check that out as well. Fantastic. In terms of projects and movements around the world, what has most excited you?
Do you know what? We touched on it earlier, actually, which is even in this time of sadness and adversity and tragedy, the uprising of people who are really embracing their role here as a change maker and here to make the world a better place just fills me with so much hope. So that for me is it, this kind of collective desire to help to make the world a better place by really stepping into who we came here to be and what we came here to do. And the more I see people stepping forward and doing that, the more it gives me hope. So that.
Oh, nice. So in terms of sort of the change makers, this probably leads into my next question regarding tech and what tech is improving your life right now.
This is a really interesting question because I'm probably like the least tech focused at the moment because I've got my head stuck into like how to, getting the business going. But actually I'm looking, it's quite interesting because I've just started working with a VA and she's helping me with a whole bunch of stuff. And actually I'm finding a renewed love for things like Trello, and I'm discovering, which is like I've used forever, like backlogs in my corporate career, but now I'm creating it in a different way to manage like, the workload that's coming through. And also I do a lot of I show up a lot on social channels as well. So Trello, things like Buffer for scheduling, like I'm learning about new tools.
Oh, yes.
Flowdesk is my email, I design my emails in Flowdesk. So it's a myriad of new tools that I'm using. I'm learning how to use.
Yeah, I could definitely relate. When we started the Problem Busters podcast, I think Calendly was one thing that saved a lot of time.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
And Trello really sort of hit me because it's like Jira for my life. Oh, I love it.
It's Jira for my life. There you go. Yeah.
So if there was one thing you would like to change in the world, what would it be?
My God, what a question. I would like for everybody to recognize that they're empathetic beings and just to embrace that, like, just to stop and listen, ask a question, really hear that, just right back to the beginning of this podcast, right? Really hear what somebody is telling you, and just lean into the empathy. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I think that's a great. I think that's a great thing. I think being in a customer facing role for a long time, I think empathy definitely is one of those things, and just in the world in general, I think it costs nothing to be nice, really.
Absolutely. It makes such a difference.
Yeah. If there was one thing you would like people to take away from this episode, what would it be?
To trust yourself. Just to trust yourself, like to trust that whatever you feel within you, listen to that. When you feel, and we all get those like nudges, or it might feel like going into the same situation every day makes us feel uncomfortable in our bodies, or we keep hitting burnout or feeling frustrated. like there's a message there. There's a message. So just listen and trust what is trying to be shown to you. And equally about the things that make you feel really good. So notice like when your energy feels good, when you feel full up, you're just, you're in flow, things feel easy, like life's not meant to be difficult. When, notice those moments as well and follow those threads, trust in yourself, trust that you have everything within you to follow your dreams, have the career that lights you up, lean into listening, noticing, and just trusting what is coming from you, because all the signs are coming from there. And work with somebody who you trust equally, who you have a good connection with, who you can have a good conversation with, to hold you through the process if it is a change that you're looking to make or a leap that you're looking to take, because it's incredibly difficult to do it by yourself. And to have somebody kind of hold you and guide you through the process is like worth its weight in gold for sure. I've worked with many coaches and mentors over the years, and they've been invaluable in helping me. So yeah, I don't feel you have to go it alone.
That's really powerful. That's really powerful. In terms of getting in touch with you, Stacy, how can people find out more about you?
So my website is stacy-holland.com. So you can kind of get in touch with me there. I'm on Instagram at Stacy Holland Coaching. I'm on LinkedIn. And so any of those channels really. But if you wanted to contact me directly and have a conversation, then you can book a discovery call on the website, or just send me an email, stacy@stacy-holland.com.
Stacey, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
This has
My pleasure.
helped a lot of people, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I've loved it. Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, thank you for tuning in. We look forward to catching up next time. There's plenty more to come, isn't there, Jonathan?
Definitely. Thank you again. Stay safe and trust in yourself. Ciao.